as always, YouTube and Odyssey are the big ones, but I'm on Twitter too. And how Twitch, how much do you get out of that? Is that like a good, because I haven't done Twitch yet. I'm thinking about jumping on Twitch too, just because a lot of streamers do use it.
Well, I am on Twitch because I have this like theory about it that they have exclusivity, right? So you do Twitch and then you can't like rebroadcast onto YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff at the same time. But I'm a huge gaming fan and I followed Twitch back from before it was Twitch, when it was Own3TV or
Okay.
Justin.tv, or it like merged or whatever. Like I've been watching Twitch streams for ages, and I just knew about 5 years ago, I was about 5 years late to it, that the just chatting section was going to be massive. So I was kind of like, this is going to be a huge opportunity for crypto. And there is now a crypto section, which is still pretty small, but hopefully I can build up and be dominating in that section. And then once crypto goes up, then crypto on Twitch will go up. And then if you're just the top, or in the top like 5 or 10 people that actually get displayed, then you can just cash in massively on that. That's kind of my theory. So
it's definitely funny to see the different like approaches of podcasters and stuff, because like I was just on some dude's podcast who gets like single digit views on YouTube and stuff, but then he has like 1,000+ downloads on the audio podcast, and I'm like, well, I'm the opposite. Like I get a few hundred to a couple thousand views on YouTube / about half that much on Odysee, I guess. But then on like the audio ones, it's like 70, 80 views for downloads per episode. So I'm like heavy on the video front. And then like Twitch, it's kind of funny. Do you remember Call It Instead? Remember that guy?
Yeah. Well, that was part of, I mean, he stopped doing a lot of streams and stuff, and that was part of why I had to start my show to fill that niche in the market,
Yeah, exactly. And he was a Twitch heavy dude too. So that kind of makes it. I was also thinking. Omar says hi. Hi, Omar.
Omar, legend. He watched my show a lot.
Fun dude. Also thinking about like, there's a lot of like interference hitting stuff. Like I think it's I wonder if its keystrokes are being picked up by the microphone.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to. I'm just tweeting it out right now.
Yeah.
How do I?
Well,
here we go. Live.
My keystrokes don't, so I can do all the I can do all the work. It's kind of cool. It's hard sometimes. Like when I'm a guest on shows, I like want to be like working the shit. Like I want to be looking up things and stuff. It's like, dude, just sit put and talk. That's their job,
Yeah, exactly. I'm too used to hosting. All right, I'm all yours, mate. Nothing but words now.
It's fine. We were dealing with Jitsi glitches earlier. And that reminded me of like, do you remember when Brave was like, we're going to do our own like private encrypted Zoom thingy? And it's literally...
No, I don't remember that.
Well, they said they're doing their own like Zoom thing in the browser. It's like, oh, wow, that sounds cool. I'm already kind of happy with using Jitsi, but I'm like, sure, I'll try it. And so I open it up and it is Jitsi. It literally, they freak because it's open source stuff, right? They literally stole Jitsi, but they want to charge you if you want to have more than 4 people in there. I'm just like... fuck right off, mate. I'm just like done. Like, what do you like? Really? It's like I made
that's
this.
open source. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You made that. I made that. But that's how open source should be. I like that. And part of contributing to open source is sort of in expectation of that, right? Yeah. I put out all my stuff. You do. Everybody does, and it just goes up on YouTube. And if somebody wants to make a meme format out of it, or they want to make a remix, or they want to rehost it on their channel and I don't know, do something, whatever. That's just the way the game is. I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be tracking them down. I'm not going to be suing them for copyright or anything like that. I'm just going to take it as Streisand effect that will ultimately be good for my own content, because people will wonder, where did this come from, and track it down one way or another, right? So I think that's just the way you've got to operate in today's environment, really.
Today's nutty world, which is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Might be a good time to roll the intro graphics. We're about 5 minutes in. There's 6 people watching on YouTube, 3 on Odysee. Who knows how many on freaking Twitter? Just check on that, make sure. We got 5 watching on Twitter. It's not bad. All right. let us actually roll this little intro graphic. I have a better one made, but I'll wait for a channel relaunch to like actually start using it. So apologies for the ghetto intro. So hey everyone, and happy Friday! Thanks for watching. This is the Digital Cash Rundown. I screwed up my own podcast name, the Digital Cash Rundown. I'm joined by the one and only Jeremy, because there are no others. There's
exactly.
only one.
The best one in the world.
Yes, the one from the Bitcoin Cash podcast, or at the BCH podcast on Twitter. Before we jump into things, obviously, if you're new to the channel, because some people are, because, you know, I'm bringing the big guns here today and leeching off their audience, obviously subscribe and then hit the like button so the stuff gets elevated in the rankings and stuff. Also, I'm paywalling Jeremy today, unfortunately, so you have to, if you drop stuff in the live chat, I will read it, but I'll kind of leave you on red. I'll give you the silent treatment. But if you want to actually interact, you got to go to cointr.ee/desertlinks, throw in some tips, and then I will be compelled by the forces of monetary incentives to actually address your question. And if you do anything like, you know, really vulgar things or something, I will address that you said it, but I won't display it on the screen. That's the only thing. Everything else, it's all good. You can just say Bcash is a scam, and I will read that out, and it will be on the screen. You can all say nothing but that, as long as there's a stream of money in there. If it gets a little too abusive, I'm gonna kick him some of it. So, you know, just pay him for his troubles. You know, being like a whipping boy here. But yeah, that's how it works around here. So
I love it. Bcash, go ahead. Roger Ver tweeted he's come back to Twitter after more than a year absence, and it's funny. All he has to do is post anything on Twitter, and it just triggers like millions of BTC people are all in his replies. Oh, you lost. It's over. You're a scammer. Blah 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 blah. And just the funny thing is, like, they're mad. He's not mad. They're mad. How did he lose?
Mad. The funny thing, I don't know if you spend enough time on crypto Twitter to see all the nonsense, but there's this dude called Matt Wallace. Shout out to, well, don't shout out because, you know, I'm not a big fan. But he's some like incessant Dogecoin pumper, and he does stuff like he'll just tweet out the word Dogecoin, and then it gets like 10,000 likes or something, and I hate it so much. So I think that Roger should just start mixing in some of his quality tweets with some like shitposty tweets. I would just love to have him just tweet out in all caps Bcash, not even Bitcoin Cash, just Bcash, and just like watch everyone like. And then just go back to his regular tweets. Have you been hacked? Have you been hacked? And then like, no, he just said it and he moved on. And then his engagement starts growing because some people are like, what's he up to? I want to follow him. And then there you go. Roger, if you're watching this, you probably aren't, but you might. You're welcome. Send me a tip. cointr.ee/thedesertlinks. All right. So first on our list of things to chat about, Binance commits $500 billion to co-invest in...
Right? Not billion.
Million. Yes, that would be a lot of money. $500 million to co-invest in Twitter with Elon Musk. Binance is among the 18 co-investors in Elon Musk's Twitter acquisition, alongside firms like Sequoia Capital Fund and Fidelity Management and Research Company. I don't think there needs to be very much more. There's not much more to this other than CZ is wanting to jump in on the Twitter stuff. What's your hot take on this?
Well, I thought it was funny because that's a little over 1%, right, of the actual sort of buy-in, and there was these 18 investors. So all up, you know, he was one of the big ones, but let's say they did 15 or 16% of it. That's probably a non-trivial amount, and it's kind of ironic because Elon originally was buying in for 15%, right? Or he was capped at 15%, and then he eventually said, screw it, I'll just buy the whole thing. But then even in that scenario, it's now just reversed where he's bought the whole thing, but now he has all these sub-investors. So he still hasn't kind of really bought the whole thing. But I guess the point is that with CZ and whoever else is backing him, it's kind of the opposite of them all buying in individually and then sort of combining their forces, where they basically just it's like delegated proof of stake. They're just saying, okay, well, Elon's going to run it however the hell we want, and we're just kind of along for the ride. So you do sort of wonder, is CZ or are these people, do they just want to have a little slice? So if they ever want to just make one or two little tweaks, they can just, Elon, remember that 500 mil? Like, can you just ban this guy for me? Is that what they're trying to do, or is it a marketing play by them? I don't really understand why CZ put in 500 mil except to be like, I'm here too, kind of thing.
So the thing about CZ in particular, Changpeng Zhao is a very smart man, and he is a very smart man along the lines of the bottom line. So he makes a lot of money, which is one of those reasons why you see him everywhere. He's pumping every shitcoin under the sun. And then as soon as like DeFi got like a whiff over the horizon, he just started making his CeFi DeFi stuff. Like just literally making DeFi that he runs, because he just knows that there's a lot of money that's going to go there, and he wants to just be on there and still capture it, you know? So he's clearly like ahead of trends. And as soon as he sees like Elon is taking over Twitter, it's clearly a very strong value proposition demonstration for Twitter that people are willing to fight over it to this extent. That it was like, all of a sudden, like Elon starts talking about trying to buy it and stuff. Then the Saudis come out of the woodwork and a bunch like, whoa, what's going on here? And then a bunch of people throw like all this stuff. It's like interesting. And I guess it's also like, well, Twitter's so valuable now, but Elon Musk managed to make a bunch of like top companies and stuff. It's a bullish signal on Twitter in general. And so it's probably just a sound investment, to be honest. But Elon's a crypto guy of sorts. And how much easier is it to get them to integrate Binance Pay on Twitter if you're if you drop like $500 million in there? Like, it's not like he gets the say of things, but it's a lot more influence of like, hey, all these spam bots, can you get rid of them? Of course, he already wants to do that, but it's like, hey, so like what payment solution should we integrate to like process all our crypto stuff? And he's like, ooh, I got one. And it's not like he has to, but it's like the world is incestuous, right? Like everyone, if you have like some mate who's like someone who's working on your podcast and you're looking for a new brand of microphone or something, and he just happens to like, oh yeah, my mate has a company that does this, and they're like actually the best and they're super undervalued, you'd probably be like, screw it, I'm going to get his microphone, just the way it works. So it's probably something similar to that.
Yeah, exactly. He's just keeping his fingers in the pie. And I agree. He's a smart guy. He's making, money hand over fist. So he probably doesn't really care. And I just think it's funny that it's this little, like, I don't want to say cabal, it's not really the right word, but these little alliances going on where Elon and now CZ, this kind of maverick people that are just making tons of money and just don't give a shit about any of the traditional sort of government or institutions or whatever. They're just sort of out there blazing their own path a bit, and now they're kind of starting to team up a little bit. I think we're seeing a bit of a shift in the world where more people will be on sort of team Elon, basically, who aren't huge wealth fund managers or legacy institution people. Anybody who makes a quick few hundred million or a couple billion is gonna start aligning to be, okay, we're gonna start making some better alternatives because we've made enough money, and now for us it's about having an impact. And I think there's clearly a need for that in the world, and stuff like Twitter has maybe made it more possible for these people to kind of link up and console. As ridiculous as that sounds, like when have they not been able to do that in the past? I still do think there is an element to that lowered friction, especially of the people who have the biggest profiles, to just team up and just make it happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting, as a greater societal trend, it's kind of funny to see the linking up of the underdogs, and it's sort of wild that some of these underdogs are so big. Like Elon Musk, as the richest guy in the world, like is somehow an underdog. It's like, how did that work out? And then his best bud, Joe Rogan, is the single biggest media personality in the world too. Also the underdog, also the fringe guy. How did that work out? And then now crypto is still a little early to be like, but it's still big. It's still, the future. And then the crypto world is kind of like attaching itself to it. So we're starting to see these like the new, the new bosses are starting to like link up, and it's going to turn over, and those people are going to become dickheads eventually, and then we have to all starts over again. But so far so good,
Yeah. Well, it's just encouraging to see that there is some sort of, resistance and pushback, really, because if that wasn't going on, like you said, I mean, it's not even about how rich you are or how much money you have. Clearly, there's I don't know, an ideological divide, or just I don't know, a self sovereignty kind of vibe, maybe, to just these shadowy, wealth funds or whatever, that it all goes on behind closed doors. Nobody knows what's going on. They've all had trillions of dollars for centuries or whatever. Nobody ever really knew how the hell it all happened, but we just generally understand that we're getting exploited. And now there's some pushback, and maybe in the modern age there's enough breakthrough of the signal that people can form a kind of alternative, or resistance, I guess.
Well, there is a lot of like breakthrough now, like with crypto becoming much closer to mainstream. Like, for example, Gucci is the latest luxury brand to accept crypto payments in store. And so they did a lot of basically they're taking 12 cryptos, which seems like, if I'm able to make a guess, I'd say they're using BitPay, because Bitcoin Cash, Ether, wrapped Bitcoin for some reason, Litecoin,
That's pretty weird, yeah.
Dogecoin. Yeah, it sounds like the thing. Yeah, wrapped Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, like if only we wanted to use Bitcoin, but it's not actually Bitcoin and somehow costs even more to send. There you go. Like, it's one
Brilliant.
of those things.
I'm sure they'll get loads of sales in wrapped Bitcoin.
Yeah, it is crazy. I was just chatting with the CEO of BitRefill earlier today, and he was saying how you'd be surprised at how much sales come in things that like Ethereum based USDT and stuff like that, and just like stuff you would not like. Why would you pay that much to like spend your crypto? But like sometimes people just have what they have, and then they spend it. And so if there's some big trader dude who's like, yeah, I just realized this giant gain on a trade, and it's all in Tether. I'm gonna go buy some Gucci with this Tether, like straight from the source. Like, sounds kind of ridiculous to me, but I guess it works. Like, for those of us who actually use crypto on a daily basis, like for regular small purchases and not for gains, it might seem a little stupid. But for the gains makers, those kinds of people, it might actually make sense to do wrapped Bitcoin that you just did this weird DeFi contract thing with, and this is what you got, rather than I gotta unwrap it or I gotta trade it for something that works, and then just send it right over there. So I guess that part makes sense, but it's still a little weird. I wonder how many people are really buying Gucci bags though, in like right away with crypto though.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I think it's not necessarily really about the pragmatic aspect, but it is still really important, because it's demonstrating two things. Firstly, that crypto for payments is coming back on the agenda. I know you've been saying for a little while, like it's going to be a bit of a renaissance in that, and obviously I agree. And that's where ultimately it's going to end up, with everyone paying for everything in crypto. But we've got to get there in sort of baby steps. But after 3 or 4 years of it not being as much part of the discussion, it's coming back into the discussion, and something like this massively legitimizes it. And then the other aspect is that they just went for a broad spectrum of crypto, because that's the other thing that's changed. It's not just like we're accepting Bitcoin, or even just we're accepting Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe Litecoin or maybe Bitcoin Cash, or the bigger ones. Now it's kind of like you've got to do crypto for payments, and you just got to do it, just got to shotgun it out, because the market is deciding in real time as to what coins it wants to use. And if you pick any one, even just Bitcoin, you're already cutting out more than half the market probably. So that's just those two things in combination are going to be the big story over the next 2 years.
That's one of those crazy things, is when you look at the if you look at the payments that are accepted by crypto payment processors, which cryptos are accepted, if you compare that to the top coins of like 2015, 2016, 2017, it's close. It's a very similar list. But if you compare it to the top coins today, it's absolutely not at all the same. And it's funny, you go on like, CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap or whatever, and then you just filter by cryptocurrencies, and it's like the top 10, or they're still the same as back in the day. It's just that all the new stuff is all a million tokens, a million DeFi project, everything's a stable coin. Like, why do we need 5 stable coins in the top 10 or whatever? That kind of stuff. It's kind of funny. It's harder to see like which are the good ones, like which are the ones to use for payments. And I think that's why a lot of these BitPay must just be the easiest option to onboard, because a lot of these things are like, all right, we take crypto now. We did our job. Like, you happy now, dudes? Like, it's not like, which are customers trying to pay with, And that's something I think is funny. Like, Dogecoin's resurgence has been wild because, first off, it was like 6 months before people realized that the fees got absurd on Dogecoin. Oh, it's fast and cheap. Have you used it? No. Exactly. But then it's also funny how this, like, no one's really using this kind of weird meme coin thing turned into, like, now everyone's bending over to try to integrate it. And it's like, are they really going to see a return on investment as far as the payments? Probably not.
Yeah, well, I think I think it's really important what you're saying about the coin market cap listings and stuff, because between about early 2018 and late 2020, I wasn't following crypto as much. I kind of took a bit of a break from the scene, as a lot of people do. And when I came back, I thought, what are all these coins? Where is all the mining machines? Like, this has gone nuts. And then what I slowly, well, actually fairly rapidly discovered was, oh, wait a second. If you filter this down to actual crypto coins, like it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and the rest of the top 25 or whatever is like tokens on ERC, or it's stable coins that are done in some weird way, or it's not actual networks with their own Reddit boards and with communities and governance and all that stuff. Like, that's literally not what any of this stuff is. But if you're coming from the outside, you look at cryptocurrencies and it's the default filter, or the default lack of filter, is just everything, and they're all compared by market cap, which is kind of a bit nonsensical for cryptos to begin with, although it's probably the best we've got. But then once you have those different flavors, it's even more nonsensical, like Tether's market cap compared to Bitcoin's market cap. It's two completely different ideas. So I just think that plays into things for sure. But it's default advertising. If you get near the top, you're still winning. That's still how people think of it. It's still rank 1 or rank 4, even though it's several different things all being mashed together.
It's especially fun when, it was like a couple months ago, I got on whatever BitBoy's like live crypto show channel, because not because those people like me, but because someone else I know dropped out and said, hey, you want to pinch in last minute? So and it was fine, but it was such a different world, because the kind of stuff we talk about is very different from, and they're just like, hey, so what do you think of these coins and how are they going to do? It's all, first off, is all a lot of like market based stuff, but also just like, what the hell is a Cadena? Like, I don't know what that is. And then I just looking at, it's some like EVM compatible, blah blah. It's like everything. It's like, all right, do you even use it? Does it work? Like, there's a few new entrants into the space that are worth paying attention to, at least in the short term. Like, for example, Luna, which we'll get to that in a second. But like, a lot of this stuff is just, it's almost like people don't even know what these things are. Like,
oh, of course not.
It's just like random. It's like a name and a little logo and then just money. How much does it go up and down? It's like whatever else doesn't really matter.
And that's why people are always talking about it being like the .com bubble, because it really is genuinely like that. Oh, this has got a domain name, pets.com. That sounds pretty straightforward. It's the exact same thing. People just shoveling their money into it, and then with no idea except that, well, vaguely this is where the action is, and hopefully if I am in the future, I'll be rich, or if I pull it out at the right time, I'll also be rich. So, mate, got to be in it to win it. That's kind of the mentality. And then, when I went to a crypto meetup in London, it would have been more than 6 months ago now, but it was such a bizarre experience because 95% of the people there was about 30 people, 95% of them, except for me and maybe one or two others, had joined in the last year or two, and all they knew about was their exchange app and just what coins they could buy and sell, basically. And I was like, "What? You guys don't know anything. You don't know about private keys. You don't know about transacting. You don't know about the history. You don't know about Satoshi. Like, you don't barely know about anything."
Yeah, it's not like they
bizarre.
need to know about all. I mean, I think they should, but it's not like they need to know about that stuff. However, they need to know at least what this is. What is the thing behind the little icon and the price tag here? Like, what are you buying into? What does it deliver? Like, what is it? What are the prospects of it getting anywhere? Like, for example, like in, I guess, the modern investing world, I guess, because I don't really do much of that, but at least you know what the company is you're investing in. You're like, oh, this is it's like a tech company that builds software for this, and at least you know like a few sentences of like what the use case is supposed to be, and it's gonna go up. And you're like, all right, I think this sounds good. I'll invest in this. But like, what is like these? I gotta actually ramble for just a second while I look it up, because I actually saw something weird on like CoinGecko that I just was like, what the hell is this even? And, I gotta pull it up. So let's see. The top 10 according to CoinGecko today are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, BNB, USDC, and then it's XRP. Finally, an old school one. Then it's Luna, Solana. At least I know what those are. Cardano, UST, the Luna coin, and then Doge. No, then BUSD. Also known as like the Binance stablecoin is like the top 11, which is like, how weird is that? And then Doge. Then you got DOT, AVAX, SHIB. Then 16th is ST
Right.
The hell is that?
Never heard of that.
Is that because I know there was a bunch of ST things? No, it's Lido staked Ether.
Okay.
Like,
what is Lido?
I don't know, but it's a top 16th. It's top 16 coin, you bastard. You better like it. Like, what?
This is popping off. ApeCoin as well. I mean, we're gonna, I think, maybe touch on that a bit later. But that just came out of nowhere. That was just up from number 20,000 or just nowhere to the top like 15 or something last week, and then of course now it's the reason for that has vanished, and so it's all just crashing back down, and now it's almost back out of the top 30 again. And it's just like, well, all right.
It's just quite strange, a quite strange world. But on slightly more real notes, I mentioned Luna in there, which top 23rd coin is Bluna, which is bonded Luna. I'm like, okay, is that like worth, like, can't we condense all these under an ecosystem? Like all the Ether, everything, all the tokens are all considered part of Ethereum, all the other stuff. But speaking of, anyway, say the Luna Foundation Guard acquires an additional 37,000 or so Bitcoin as part of their reserve strategy. The acquisition, totaling roughly 1.5 billion, will be used to further backstop Terra Luna's algorithmic stablecoin USD. So, well, let me get your hot take on that stuff before I go into some stuff.
Well, I mean, the whole UST thing, it seems to me like such a house of cards, and I know some people love it and think it's great, and I guess probably relative to Tether it might be better than that, but it's still not really got it right, because the whole point is it's sort of a clever idea that you can buy in on one token, and that means the market is giving it value, and therefore you can have stable coins that cash in and cash out. But as far as I understand it, buying in is a self-fulfilling prophecy where it pumps it up, basically, right? If more people are coming in, if the price is going up, then they're minting more stable UST. But then it goes in reverse as well too, and we haven't really seen a period where it's been a bear market or where it's gone down, because it's been getting more popular. But if that starts, then everybody can just be trying to dump to get out, and the more people dump, the more nervous it makes the remaining people to try and dump and get out of the Ponzi scheme, basically. And so then it can all just blow up overnight. And they're sort of not really helping themselves in this regard, because their solution to this is, well, why don't we back this with some Bitcoin, which is also a nightmare, because not only is that completely nonsensical, because now you've got the volatility risk of the, like, if the whole system worked, it should work whether there's Bitcoin there or not. But then putting Bitcoin is not even a very effective band-aid, because it's kind of like, well, if crypto dumps, then Bitcoin's going to be going down at the same time too. And what are you going to do? Sell off the thousands of Bitcoin? Well, then you're perpetuating the problem. And it just, people just don't really understand, I think, the fact that a crypto token shouldn't be about backing things. It backs itself. That's the whole point. The whole point of a verifying things on a blockchain is that the blockchain guarantees the assets on it. It doesn't guarantee anything else. And so if the market gives value to like a Bitcoin, then that's it. You don't want it to be related to gold or to some stable coin or fiat, because then there's counterparty risk. So yeah, it just seems like a nightmare to me.
It's crazy. Like, first off, we're definitely in the golden age of stable coins right now. This is the top. Like, because everything's a stable coin. A lot of stable coins that provide a lot better utility than ever in the past. And at the same time, I think we're starting to hit the point where the biggest and best fiat, i.e. the dollar, is starting to look more like a regular fiat. You know, like we're starting to see that it's not a staple asset when prices are going up and stuff. Inflation is nasty. So the thing about Luna, it made a lot of people really excited because it allowed a lot of DeFi applications to work well because of the stablecoin thing. And I kind of like the idea of the algorithm of like the burn and mint kind of like seesaw thing. And I'm pretty sure THORChain's doing something similar for their Thor USD thing that they're going to use for their DeFi stuff and all that. So the thing is, a perfectly algorithmic stablecoin, I don't know how much I could believe that that's going to be like stable, but it's an experiment, and that's kind of the entire reason why Luna's up there, is because this is supposed to be an interesting innovation. It's supposed to be there. And then, so I went through like some phases on like the Bitcoin buy stuff. First, when he bought Bitcoin, I was like, isn't this algorithmic? That doesn't sound very algorithmic to me. And then I kind of went to like, okay, I guess it makes some people who aren't used to the concept like more comfortable. They're like, well, at least there's this behind it in case the algorithm like doesn't hold up or something. Okay, I guess it's like to keep the boomers satisfied or whatever, the crypto boomers. And now like the amount of Bitcoin, they have almost as much, like it's like half of over. So the Luna Foundation, I guess, the LFG, or you know, I mean, is that a coincidence that those are the initials? But has more value in Bitcoin, I think, than more than half the value of UST in Bitcoin. So it was like, what is it, like 18? They have like 10 billion, or they're going for like 10 billion Bitcoin, and UST is like, or 18 billion. So now I'm on the other side, back up to like skepticism. I'm like, what if like the entire Terra Luna ecosystem is just a way for stablecoin, to hoard an ungodly amount of Bitcoin and then just get out of things. And as I've said before, and this is not, some people criticize me for being a little harsh on this, but it's especially for someone who holds and uses like Luna and stuff like that, maybe shoot myself in the foot. But like, it seems almost like a Justin Sun thing where he made like his like Tron like Ether knockoff. And then just like when he made a bunch of money, he started trying to buy things like exchanges and Steam it and all this kind of other stuff, like buy real things once he got a lot of money off of his fake bullshit. And so it's not an educated opinion to say that about Luna, but it's an uneducated gut feeling of just, man, isn't this guy like, he's hoarding a lot of not his coin? Like, what's up with that? Like, is he just trying to like get it while he's got it, and then the whole thing collapses? He's like, suckers, I got all the Bitcoin. Like, well, what's going on here?
Well, it's just like Michael Saylor. It's the exact same thing. His whole company, which is now just this kind of weird, financially hypothecated bet on the price of Bitcoin. And it's like, if you wanted that, you could just go and buy some Bitcoin. But for various reasons, somebody thinks that if you have Bitcoin, but also you have Michael Saylor, like, in control, that makes it even better. So then they buy MicroStrategy stock. Like, it's just ludicrous, the whole thing. But I mean, all this stuff is going to come undone. It's sooner or later. It's really just it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. But maybe it works out for them for a little while, and maybe a few people get out of their bags before it all goes boom. And good for those people, I guess. But yeah, the whole thing's a sham, pretty much.
Yeah, and it could be that this is like the start of something like cool. This could be like, okay, algorithm stable coins are great. This is just like an extra, thing, and they're going to just eventually over time sell all their Bitcoin to pump Luna even higher, and therefore you can make more stable. Whatever. It could just be all that. It could just be this is a bunch of money to like just a hedge so they could still operate during the bear market or whatever. Who knows what the hell? It could be something good. I just also wasn't born yesterday. I've seen so many things come and go. I'm like this is a little weird. Like it's always so if someone talks too much shit about Bitcoin, I don't really trust them because we all kind of come from that, and you have to at least understand where this came from or the genius of Satoshi in order to have any credibility in the crypto space. On the other side, if people start sucking up too much, like Charlie Lee with Litecoin's, like, oh, Bitcoin's so good too, like then you're not actually providing anything new or of utility. You're just you're a Klingon, Klingon bird of prey. Just cling on to people who like a Remora, who did all the work and who provide all the value for you. So I'm kind of at this point where, I mean, obviously, if you're in the stablecoin business, you're in the business of pegging things to fiat, which is kind of antithetical to crypto, except it's like a good interim tool. It's good, like, as a hedge. You have this like way of hedging against the temporary volatility of crypto, I should say, because eventually everyone's going to use crypto and it won't be as volatile. But like, there's some of that it leaves a weird feeling when it's just so much like, oh, we want to be one of the largest Bitcoin holders. It's like, is that what this is about? I didn't see that in the white paper.
Yeah.
In the Terra Luna white paper, become one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. What? I didn't see that in there.
Yeah, I don't know. They're just going to switch it up. Like it's almost like a Darwinian type of thing, as everybody's just trying to get to the top of the crypto heap by any means necessary, and just whatever is the newest. Which is why I do understand why so many people are critical of crypto, and they have from outside the scene, if you don't understand enough of the background, and you also perhaps are not predisposed to the kind of, well, we'll just let the free market sort it out, / people can do whatever they want, / idiots are going to be idiots. If you don't have that much of a sensibility and you just look from the outside, you just think this is all a bunch of nonsense, which just continually gets bigger and bigger and bigger from their point of view. So I do understand those criticisms of crypto.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. As I was chatting with Sergey at BitRefill, he kind of grudgingly was like, yeah, I've been in the crypto adoption space for a long time, where for like money, and he's like, we were all looking for crypto's killer app, and he says it turns out maybe the casino is the killer app, and he doesn't know how he feels about it. It's like, kind of. I mean, that is the biggest crypto use case, is the gling 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 gling, cherry cherry cherry,
gambling,
yay.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the big thing, but in my kind of way of wrapping my head around that, because the free market's never wrong, it's just misunderstood. I kind of came to the conclusion of, when you swipe your card, for those of us who have cards, I guess, you could buy almost anything you want in the world. Like, no one's stopping you. There's almost no financial censorship in the West. Like, there is kind of, but not really. Like, the average person can buy anything, but the average person can't really invest and make a bunch of money. Like, that stuff is like out of reach for a lot of regular people, right? And so crypto, like the water fines is the lowest level or whatever it is, like that's where it goes first, is where people can't make money, and so now crypto's running to let people make money. And once that kind of gets saturated, then it'll start to flow into other bits, like, oh, maybe payments are more efficient, and that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also just generational, which is just that my age and probably a little bit younger, even definitely if you're in the Zoomers or whatever, then you're just like, shit's fucked. How am I going to ever buy a house? It's just not going to happen. The price of a house is going up, 5 times as fast as my wage, which is underperforming inflation. And I'm at the bottom of the, work totem pole to begin with. So we're getting paid nothing to. It just, people can see it's all just coming apart at the seams, and it's like, how is any of this going to work? It isn't. So it's just kind of the nihilistic well, let me just all in on crypto then, because there wasn't much hope
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, but maybe this will be good in 10 years, because the way it's going now, it's not going to be good in 10 years. That's sort of what I feel is playing into it too.
It's funny for a bit of perspective. My buddy Lorenzo, who grew up in Venezuela, said that he's seeing a lot of the same stuff as he saw in like 2007, where people are starting to take out like fiat denominated loans, knowing that they'll have to pay back a fraction of that. You know, so like if you take out a low, like a $500,000 loan for like a mortgage, what's the purchasing power going to be in 30 years when that's over? Like the equivalent of like 100,000 or something or less. And you just ride that out. And then, you know, your salary may not keep up with inflation, but it's still going to go up, whereas your mortgage stays kind of the same. And then who gets screwed at the end of that? Not the banks that are getting screwed. They're just going to get a bailout from the people who still hold fiat, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of, it's a little gross and Darwinian, but I mean, I've been telling everyone about crypto for almost 10 years, close to 10 years now, right? Like, fuck them. Right? Like, if they haven't figured it out by now, like, okay, I'll try my best to keep educating people. But, like, I'm done with the fiat system. And I feel like everyone who still uses fiat should be done with the fiat system by now. Just, like, do other things. And, like, oh, crypto's too volatile. Okay, well, then hedge. I don't know. What do you want to do? But do something. Like, just get out of the system and stop making excuses for it. Just like when people, it's kind of funny to me when I saw people, you know, leave California and New York and places like that in the U.S. en masse. Like, was it California lost like 200,000 people in like 2020, I think? Or in 2021, it was even more, right? Like, there's millions of people left those crappy states after lockdowns and all kinds of other nonsense. And it's like, first off, your place was a shithole for a long time before that. Let's not kid ourselves. But then a lot of people, like, what I want to know is who the hell's still there? Like,
Well,
everything went back to normal and you're just still there. Like, you didn't learn your lesson. So at some point, it's just like, all right, you know, saved as many as we could.
there's a lot of inertia in the system, man. That's just how it is. People, you can tell, like, you can lead a horse to water, right? You can bring somebody to the water and you can be like, look, it's right here. And you can explain it to them. You can show it to them. You can do everything possible. They're not interested. They can even start getting thirsty. Things can start getting bad. And people are still not looking for answers. It's like the pain has to overcome the threshold of what I'm doing is fine. The dog in the house has to be hot enough burning that it finally catches on fire and thinks, wait, this is a real issue. And so that's just how it's going to be. It does. I'm the same. I've been telling people about crypto religiously for 9 years at least, probably. And it'll be coming up to a decade probably by the end of next year. And people are slowly starting to get it. Like, I'm seeing more interest in crypto and more, you don't have to go back to the beginning on, well, inflation is going to wreck you and all that stuff. You can literally just say, you're getting wrecked by inflation, right? And people say yes. And then you go, okay, all right. So now you like, here's an answer. Else. You don't need to hypothesize that in 5 years or in 10 years, your money is going to be worth less. You can just say, look, the cost of living is going ridiculous, right? And the government's not doing anything, right? And people are like, yep. And there you go. You're already off to the races. So that's already a couple of battles that have been won. But I think we're just getting somewhat close to a tipping point at which people just start thinking that the connection between all this hype about crypto and all this casino and everything starts to link up with, wait, I'm getting wrecked and this is the solution. Like, those two things have not clicked yet. People understand they're in a bad situation and they're understanding there's a lot of excitement and activity in crypto, but they haven't connected the dots yet. And when they do, that'll be the big kind of moment.
Yeah, people are like, politicians are starting to get paid in crypto, which is kind of weird. Like, those are the kinds of people I'd like to not get paid. But still, you're starting to see that happen to where, sports stars are doing it, and then politicians, and then some entrepreneurs, and like, you're starting to see it happen. The wave's definitely coming. And I think that if you know a weirdo like us and you just ignored us for this long. But then you start seeing like a few big stars starting, like, that's when you start to be like, oh, let me ask him again what he was saying that I ignored all those years ago. It's not like at that point, that's the ultimate thing about, the way societies work, right? Is people have a very short time preference because that is geared for maximum survival of the species. You just take care of what you can today. You don't look at that farther stuff. But then the world is led by people with longer time preferences, some of whom starve to death while they're like figuring out a better way. But then the ones who don't end up being the kings, and then everyone else follows. And then there's like the stragglers who just get picked off. And it's just the way the world works. And at least we're not really talking about people dying here, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure that like they're just going to be some poor people that will have to, they just will lose a lot of wealth, and then they'll be sad, but they'll be okay. They'll still be fed. We're talking about the developed world here, at least. But I mean, the developing world. The thing is, the developing world, like with El Salvador, Panama, and Central African Republic, and starting to get into the whole crypto thing a little bit more seriously sooner. So hopefully that means that some of the people who might actually starve to death from an economic collapse are starting to get out. Let's hope.
Well, it's got to be a weird time to be, maybe 5 or 10 years old right now, because you're 10 years of sort of coming into the world and what's going on is going to be literally watching that transition. If you're 8 years old and you figure out, wait, everybody's talking about crypto, or, somehow it gets in your head, and then you just spend the next 10 years where you don't have any money, you don't have any purchasing power, you can't really directly influence, things, and you just watch your parents just not get it for a decade as the whole world just flips onto crypto. That's going to be crazy. That's going to be very hard for some of those kids.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of not getting it, NFTs. So NFT collectors sent 37 billion to marketplaces in 2022, nearly equaling 2021 already. Despite sporadic market conditions, NFT collectors are on track to spend more on NFTs in the first half of this year than all of 2021. So, here we go. What's your hot take on this last thing here?
Well, so NFTs is just the latest reinvention of people trying to figure out what digital scarcity is. Every single crypto bubble has had a tangential element of people reinventing the wheel, right? So the first one was just Bitcoin. So that one didn't count in 2011 or whatever. But in 2013, it was kind of like altcoins, shortly after that, that was when other coins started to kind of come onto the scene, Feathercoin and Primecoin and Peercoin and whatever. That was the thing. Everyone was like, well, if Bitcoin can be scarce and valuable, then so can this coin. And then you had in the bubble after 2017, 2018, that was the ICO one where it was like, it was basically just altcoins on steroids. But what if we just had thousands of them? That would be even better, right? And then the 2020 and 2021 bubble, it's NFTs has been the same thing, which is, well, if Bitcoin can be scarce, then these pictures can be scarce too, even better. And so there'll probably just be one every time until eventually enough of the world has got the message that it's not scarce unless there's some real actual solidity behind it.
Nice Ethereum joke in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, unless there's something actually going on, that's where the value is. But people haven't figured that out yet. So NFTs, it's just the latest version of people who've sort of got the idea that digital scarcity is valuable, but they haven't tuned in to which parts are actually the valuable parts and which parts are just ephemeral scams. So that's essentially my view on NFTs. There will be valuable NFTs in the future because status symbols and displaying wealth art, I get all that, right? It is a thing and it does have value, but it's definitely very overvalued right now.
The thing with it, like NFTs, is some of it is just like art kind of stuff. Some of it is super utilitarian type stuff, which is that's like the bleeding edge right now. It's really rough for the utility side of it. But I've seen like people are starting to deal with like be able to program interesting things into them. Like someone just sold a bunch of NFTs that don't really like for very little money, but it just like it has like a crypto and like it displays the current like market cap and price of the crypto. So the NFT like constantly displays that. And it's like, all right, you don't need to buy a thing for that, but like that's cool that it's not just a picture or a video or something. And then there's ones like, oh, this one you have to like authenticate with your NFT wallet, and it gives you access to something like a private club. Like only NFT holders with it in their wallet can get in here. All right, well, that's interesting. It's like a key, but kind of weird. And then we're starting to see it bubble into some like actually really cool utility, but it's like at the fringes of that. And then to a different extent, like the concept of an NFT, it's a lot of like just a digital version of every kind of individual record that exists in other systems, but it's also kind of its own thing. And one thing I've noticed is like, well, the kids these days, you know, like I have this little cousin that I haven't really, you know, my cousin's kid, who I didn't see since he was like, couldn't speak. He didn't know how to talk. And then now he's like trying to ask me about how he's going to start his NFT thing. I'm like, oh, well, life comes at you fast. And he like, a lot of people get NFTs in a way that's like it's a thing that's not like things we've had before. It's not just, oh, it's the crypto version of this. There is a little uniqueness to the concept. And I'm still wrapping my head around that because, you know, it's so new. But I think that NFTs might be one of those things that bring like mass adoption more than anything. Because for everything else, like with crypto, it's always been, you know, it doesn't really do anything. I mean, it does things, but your regular fiat world does like, oh, let's remittance. You know, okay, so you have to buy crypto, send it to someone else, and they have to sell it, or then you have to convince someone to take it as a business. It's like too many steps. People are not going to do it. It's mostly the easy step is buy it on Coinbase, and that's it. And then with the NFTs, it's like you finally need crypto for something, and you finally have something that when you sell on these like marketplaces, you get crypto for, and now you have crypto income that can only be from crypto, I guess. And now what do you do with it? Well, where do I spend crypto? Oh, I can spend it over here. Gucci, get my freaking Gucci bag, right? So like
get your Gucci NFT.
Yeah, and they're doing NFTs too, like everyone is. And so I think it's starting to hit those kinds of areas where I think that NFTs are kind of a missing link for a lot of artists and creators, that they just couldn't find a way of like monetizing their stuff in a way, because in the past you could because you sold records or whatever, but now that everyone can torrent a song everywhere, you're just like begging Spotify for crumbs. And now it's like, how do you monetize things? It's like, well, if I just sell NFTs, like the same people who wouldn't pay a fucking penny for my song, now they're gonna actually pay me like $1,000 for the song. Like it ends up being a way where you can, you know, kind of capture that. So I think that a lot of people are going to start monetizing their things through NFTs. A lot of nonprofits especially are going to start releasing NFTs. I kind of liken it to this, and this is where we get into like a really, like, this gets a little bit weird and next level and stuff, but like in the state of New Hampshire, the Hall of Flags, which is kind of a display in the state capitol of all the stuff, of all like the historical things, it's not funded by any tax dollars. What happens is in the liquor stores, the government sells a commemorative bottle of whiskey, and they sell a whole bunch of whiskey, and then they use the profits off of that to fund this little like thing, and which is kind of hilarious. I mean, that's awesome. It depends on who you're talking to, because some people think that's just like stupid and ghetto, but for people who like freedom, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I mean, the government's actually just like raising money to do this. But how far away is that? Like the bourbon's not that good. It's like, it's not that good. It's not worth it. The commemorative bottle is why you buy it. And isn't that just, couldn't they just make NFTs? Like, can't you just fund essential public services by selling NFTs? Like, I mean, we're getting like way into the weeds here, but like, isn't that just a way where it's like, I have my trophy case of like every year I bought the fire department's NFTs, and like I'm like, look at me, I'm like a community stalwart. Whereas before you wouldn't get them to do that. It's like, well, so what if some crazy rich guy like buys all the NFTs for public service stuff, and you don't get to buy any, well, you get to just have, public services for free now because someone else did that, So that kind of stuff is going to be really interesting to see when that kicks in. I can't wait for the government to start selling NFTs, which is something I bet you never thought I'd have to say.
Well, I think it's great because it kind of comes to this argument that sort of more small government type use, which is a pretty strong one, I think, which is the idea is, okay, we're all paying in tax and we're getting these services, right? But then it's kind of like if there was a menu, basically, if you could say, oh, I want to fund, whatever I want to fund, roads or hospitals or whatever, maybe a lot of people would be willing to fund roads and hospitals. How many people are willing to fund the war against drugs? Not that many people. So all the people uncheck that option, and then the cost to keep funding it rises for everybody else. And suddenly they're in the position of like, do I really care that much about this? Am I willing to go that hard on this thing that honestly doesn't impact me that much? And it's sort of, it cascades down to it's basically unfundable unless there's some really rich people who want to fund it. And in which case they're throwing away all their money. Good for them, right? But it would be the things that actually directly impact the community would get funded at a reasonable cost because you would have so many people who are willing to kind of pay into that. And I think that's what you're sort of proposing. And maybe NFTs are the missing link where it gives people a sense of pride and satisfaction. They get some recognition for buying into those things rather than just having to be forced to do it.
Yeah, and then special perks too, if you think about it, right? Because like especially when you start offering like NFT perks or something like that. One thing that I really don't know how a government can do this, and I don't think it is possible under our old conception of government. But the thing about the way NFTs work in most things today is they tend to be based on like some Ethereum or account based thing, that has just one address, like the zero privacy types. Well, that's something to be addressed at a different time. But what like the Bored Ape Yacht Club was doing is everyone who had one of their NFTs got some of their token when they started the little thing. So would it be great if you could, everyone who funds like a public service, buy the NFT thing, then if they get like an extra, you get like a dividend at the end of the quarter if they have a profit beyond that, if they have surplus, right? If they raise too much money or whatever, then everyone who bought the NFT just automatically gets stuff. And so I don't know exactly how a government doesn't really make money. It's like the city makes money, but like, or the country. But if you manage to bring in new investment to things, like you managed to make your local economy grow and there was a surplus, and then if you could send the dividend back to the people who supported the public services and all that kind of stuff, that would be pretty interesting way of doing things. It would actually make people want to invest in the government. Like, imagine that. Like, wow, you start getting crazy things there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tooling isn't really super there, not even for the government, but even for private individuals, right? Which is that there's a tennis player, she's Croatian, I think, Sasha Linikova, or I can't even remember how to pronounce her name properly, but she sold a bunch of tokens on BCH for her tennis career, basically. And I bought like $50 and a bunch of people did. And then she used that to fund herself. It's basically just crowdfunding a person. And she won a couple of tennis tournaments, and then she paid out some dividends from her prize money of doing that, right? And I think that's going to be more and more common as the tools become better. People who just want to do any kind of thing that has a prize money aspect to it, if they could just like crowdfund themselves into it with a token, and then you can just anybody anonymously in the world can invest in you if they're convinced by your story or your whatever information you put up, and then they get paid the dividends. Of course, then there's not really any accountability. If she just scammed and didn't pay me out, well, I wouldn't really have that much recourse, but I was in a position where I didn't really care. I just thought it was an interesting concept to try out. And obviously people could also build up reputation over time. If you're a public figure, there could be accountability mechanisms there somehow. You can't just necessarily match the...
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff that could happen. And I think like the NFT bubble, one thing I wonder about the NFT bubble in particular is if it's going to pop, because definitely some things are going to pop. Like I definitely think whoever bought like the first tweet, like the first Jack Dorsey tweet thing,
It's now worth like $5 or something.
Yeah, not quite that low, but like for all practical purposes, yeah, he got wrecked. And I think a lot of people who bought all that crap are getting wrecked in record numbers. It's just that I wonder if that's enough, that crash is enough to outpace the volume level growth. And so like
not.
one of the, I don't know if it's the top, but it's like one of the top 3 blockchains for volume is the Wax blockchain, which is it's just the World Asset Exchange. It's like a purpose-built NFT blockchain. It's kind of based on EOS a little bit, but like literally all they do is NFTs. That's like literally the entire reason they exist. And they're like, like was it 20 million transactions a day or something like that? They're like doing a lot of stuff, and like no one ever hears about them. I had someone on the show a few days ago talking about saying that they have like the more users than Ethereum or something like that, which I think that's crypto users are very hard to quantify, right? But like as far as NFTs, that sounds reasonable because you don't have that many Ethereum NFT users because they can't. But like Wax has a million like $3 NFT type things everywhere, and like Ken Bozak in his infinite wisdom uses Wax eternally, and he just pumps out just tons of crap all the time. Most of it is crap, but like he made it to like he became a millionaire selling like $5 and $10 NFTs, which is insane. Like, but so there's a lot of that stuff that's hard to quantify. So maybe these big splashy ones are going to go crash, but then everything else is building it out. And suppose like the gaming world is popping with NFTs, and I kind of left the gaming world before I started getting into the tradable skins kind of era of gaming, and now that's in full swing, and they're all becoming NFTs, and just like it's getting crazy. So that'll be really interesting to see where that space is in like a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not personally a big believer, at least not at the current moment, in any of this sort of metaverse or VR type like stuff. Like I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure it's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad there's people in there doing it, but I guess I just see that the same way other people see crypto, where I'm just like I'm not with that wave yet, and it just seems so much like people are hyped about this idea from Ready Player One or sci-fi going back however long, that wouldn't it be cool if you could buy your sword in this one game and then it was usable in all these games or something. But the amount of coordination that it takes to do that is just so high. In terms of one game, getting an item that is cool in one game is already hard enough, let alone games developers cooperating that you could share things between games, which they have no real incentive to do. Like it's just there's such a high barrier before this actually became anything cool. But yeah, I think we're a long way away from that, but it will happen eventually.
Yeah, the metaverse is something it's hard to I mean, it's definitely not hard to wrap my head around, but it is hard to fully like visualize it to where I'm like, a lot of people are way better at seeing what that looks like than I am. Just, it's coming. But let's wrap up with the THORChain thing, which kind of came sort of out of nowhere. I check THORChain 4 or 5 times a week. Like I don't check crypto prices daily, but I do check like THORChain volumes and stuff because it's kind of like interesting to see that space grow and all that stuff. And so I just remember I was looking at like the chains, like the very bottom of the actual native chains is like Bitcoin Cash, and I was just, and that's like one of the things I'm providing liquidity. And I was just thinking like, man, that's like not a lot of people are using that. And then I saw some rumblings in the THORChain like developer Discord of like, yeah, we should delist like the low activity chain. They're basically ghost chains, and like they mentioned Litecoin and Dogecoin, which are like several times Bitcoin Cash's level, and Bitcoin Cash. And I'm just like, oh no, because I see just how like the Dash community has worked super hard and throwing a lot of money to try to get on THORChain. It's probably going to happen in like a couple months or something. And I was just like, oh no, like Bitcoin Cash got on there for free, just like at the start. And it's just like, and I see people like talk about SmartBCH all the time. I've had Mark Lamb on and chatted about all that stuff, and it's interesting stuff for sure. But then I'm like, Can you just like take some of that? Can you just like make sure you stay on THORChain first and then kind of build from that? Because from my perspective, THORChain's like not just slightly more, but significantly more important for Bitcoin Cash than SmartBCH is. And part of that might be I'm not super in tune to how far the SmartBCH community's gone or anything like that. But that's kind of like my perspective on that. And I don't know if you have any alternative perspectives or other things to add to that. But I just thought it was an interesting subject, you know?
Yeah, well, I kind of have the opposite take, which is I haven't really used THORChain and I don't really know what it's about. I've used SmartBCH a little bit and I'm a huge fan of it, even though the actual, I guess I've used it a bit. Like I can see that it's kind of getting somewhere, but it's just kind of like, firstly, I didn't really understand what was the reasoning behind we're going to delist them. Like, do they have to do a lot of maintenance work on them or something? It seems like once it was on, was it really that much of a big issue to leave it on there? Or why would they want to delist it?
Yeah, so I think that first off, I know that every single THORChain node operator has to run a full node of all other chains. And so, like for example, if you're a THORChain node operator today, you have to run a Bitcoin node, a Bitcoin Cash node, a Litecoin node, a Dogecoin node, an Ethereum node, a BNB node, and a Terra Luna node at least, and that's already like a lot. And that's one of the reasons why like people are clamoring to get Solana on there. But Solana nodes are just so insane to run that it's like you already have this insane node package to run, and you have to run another one. And just like the overhead, kind of like I've seen like Koinomi, the the multi-coin wallet of old.
BSV, right?
Yeah, they're delisting BSV. Voyager is delisting BSV. And someone else is. And I have a feeling the reason for a lot of that is because they're just cranking out like millions of transactions a day of like crap. Like, no offense, my BSV friends, but a lot of that is just crap. It's just like noise to fill up the blockchain and say we're doing a bunch of shit. But
exactly.
So there's just it's so stressful to run a BSV node, and then for like the almost no monetary value that goes through the network, at least on these. Well, I mean, on the network as a whole, yes. But also, at least on these services, they just like cost, benefit, done. And so I think that's kind of where those rumblings came from. Of course, they're just rumblings. But like at some point, I think they mentioned they want to cap it at like 20 or so native chains. And they're at like 7 or so. And there's like a lot of other coins out there. So just thinking like maybe it'll happen eventually. But like especially because the volume is just so low. Like I think it's like at 80 grand today, which is better, but it was like at 20 grand the other day for a few days. And I'm like, I could move just some of my spare coins. I could just swap them back and forth a few times and double their volume. And it's like, it should be probably more, and like also the LPers such as me are earning single figures now. And I'm a little butthurt about that. I want to earn more from more volume. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, well, it just seems to me like if people in the BCH community are not sort of responding to this or not finding a need to it because they already have SmartBCH, well, then if they delist us, it's not really a problem. Like I would find it a problem if the BCH community was doing what the BSV community does and makes a grief. They go out, they actively make enemies. But if we aren't making enemies and it's just happens that one particular service or whatever doesn't jive with us, well, then we're better off just letting them, drop us. And basically, you want your approach to be the other way around. Instead of going to different services and saying, guys, please integrate us, do this and that. You want it to be the other way around, where your ecosystem is so popping and so massive that everybody wants to integrate with you, right? Like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're not worried about convincing anyone to integrate them because people are just like, this is where the action is. So that's why SmartBCH is great, because the BCH community luckily is big enough and sort of innovative enough and stuff. It's just building its own things specifically for BCH. And that's ultimately how you get a critical mass of people into your own coin. And then everybody else comes along for free. And BCH specifically has to be very strong on that strategy because, like you mentioned, Bit Refill earlier, and there's so many services that are just run by basically BCH, just have it out for BCH and BCH specifically, or maybe BCH and BSV, and it doesn't matter. You can talk their ear off even if it was a significant commercial hit, they still won't integrate us. So we kind of just need to be self-reliant as a community. And it sounds like this is a case where if we just build our own stuff, which does kind of much of the same thing, then if we get delisted, it's not really the end of the world. But yeah, as long as we're not actively pushing people away, then I kind of feel like the community isn't doing anything wrong if it just didn't fit particularly with this product. And hopefully we'll just grow the community big enough that they'll want to put us back in there. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing about that is something I've been going over for many years, thinking about like adoption strategies and things. And I used to think you should have your own exclusive thing approach was the right one. I've kind of done a flip on that because I think I've noticed this happen a lot, and like the BSV community is like the stellar example of this, of building as much cool shit that no one's going to use or ever know about because it's all just your little thing right there. And I know, like, for example, the Dash community did a lot of this in the past, and I think is like over that phase. But like the thing about, first off, THORChain is kind of next level in a lot of ways in that it allows anyone to just deposit and earn from that. But also it's like the decentralized shapeshift we've all been looking for, that like, you know, you got SideShift, you got, you know, Swap Space, got those other things, but there are still countries that like paywall you or whatever. They're, and not paywall you, but like geo fence you. And they're still centralized. You still have counterparty risk. But for like true decentralized kind of swap stuff, it's basically, other than a fiat on ramp, it's basically like being on the exchange to end all exchanges. That a lot of that I know some centralized exchanges are starting to just use THORChain as their backend, because then all they have to do is have a fiat on ramp to just one token or whatever, and then it's all that. And there's like a payment processor called CTX, for example, and I know there's got to be more that's integrating THORChain in their backend, so you can receive any coin at your merchant point of sale, and you'll get only the one you actually want, because it just gets swapped via THORChain automatically backend without having to worry about a centralized service and stuff. And so, and also THORChain's working on like interest-bearing accounts where you basically get a fixed, you don't have to do like the 50-50 liquidity providing. You could just get like a interest rate in your native token and only have exposure to that. And is working on like 0% interest loans that you can get on your stuff. And just like all this, all decentralized, awesome DeFi stuff. And the thing is, just any coin that's supported just gets to plug into that ecosystem. Whereas for, you know, let's just say like the SmartBCH example, like SmartBCH isn't like, this is a little bit of a hair split. It isn't really on Bitcoin Cash. It's its own thing that is bridged by, you know, CoinFlex and some centralized things like that. I think that I have not done due diligence in the last couple months about a decentralized bridge, but maybe there will be, or there is already. I don't know. But
supposedly in September, like, or later this year, hopefully that's going to be in the works, basically.
Yeah, it's basically like, I mean, take like a Binance Smart Chain type thing. It's basically like, it's like bridging Bitcoin Cash to Binance Smart Chain, kind of, but much fewer users. I'm sure. I mean, I haven't checked, but probably many fewer users, much smaller. And so it's kind of like the distance between 2 points, you know, from like a user experience perspective, like someone coming into crypto. It's like, oh, I got Bitcoin. Now it's like, what else is there? And it's like, well, there's this other Bitcoin. Like, what's that for? Like, oh, well, you can get that and then bridge it to another token and then start doing some DeFi over here. It's like and the compelling reason to use something like SmartBCH as someone who doesn't care about BCH to begin with, let's just say, the compelling reason for those people to get all the way out there is probably not there. It's only, well, that DeFi is good because it can easily bridge into something you can spend in the real world. But it's kind of like just for those people in this little group here. Whereas with THORChain, you just, any coin goes right into the native DeFi right there. But also, if someone starts to, let's just say someone starts providing Dogecoin liquidity, and then like Dogecoin dies off, because it will eventually, whatever. And then they're checking their THORChain, they're looking at the APYs and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, oh, Bitcoin Cash is looking attractive today. I'm going to go swap some into that and make some money off of that. Now they got some of that, and then they start thinking, what can I do with it? And then it's like, oh, okay. why don't I move more of my stuff in? It's like an adjacent thing for anyone who's on the ecosystem jumps on board. And I've noticed with a lot of the Dash community promoting the upcoming integration, I've seen a lot of like THORChain fans starting to become Dash fans as a result. They're like, oh, like they didn't know it existed now they're starting to notice it. So I think that in fact, SmartBCH it would be hilarious if SmartBCH got added to THORChain as well. And now THORChain is the bridge. You just go whoop, and it's way easier than whatever's being worked out as. And that could be like the whole fun integrated ecosystem as well. But I just think that like for example, being on BitPay is one of those things where, you know, all these lazy companies just like add crypto payments, and it's like you ride the bus for free. You know, you get on for free, you get those network effects. Whereas if you get your own, like, you know, one coin exclusive point of sale system, you start trying to pitch merchants on it, and then someone comes by and says, hey, you take Dogecoin? They're like, no. And then they just miss out on the sale. Or then the merchant is like, I'm going to do the one that takes Dogecoin now. And then like being a part of those greater network effects, because like crypto is becoming mass adopted, and it's not even Bitcoin. Like it's Bitcoin and Ethereum and NFTs are like to start out with, and some other ones too. And it's like, I feel like there should be a lot more like attention and liquidity and stuff pushed over to the THORChain side just to keep it in the discussion, to just keep those network effects. Because if it got cut off, that would be like really sad. Because one of the things I'm personally looking forward to is being able to swap between the two, well, Dash and Bitcoin Cash especially, but also some other ones, like easily. And then when that's off, I'm like, oh, now I got to like get outside of my fun little Dex pool and to get other stuff. And I'm like, oh, never mind, you know? So I just think that it's something that needs to be prioritized. It's a really valuable thing. And it doesn't mean you need to like not do SmartBCH, but like push some money over, push some swapping and activity over, talk about it, promote it, you know, even though it's not exclusively owned by, you know, it's not an exclusive BCH project. But if you do that, I think also anyone who holds BCH on that platform starts earning a lot more money, and then it becomes more, because you get more volume, and then it becomes more attractive to own BCH to begin with, so you get more holders, they buy in, and then there you go, and then the whole thing kind of grows from there.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got nothing against it. I hope it all works out. I did have a bit of a look at THORChain the other day. I still don't really understand. I mean, maybe you were sort of explaining there, if everybody runs all the different nodes, maybe that's how it can somehow be sort of decentralized. I sort of got the feeling that it was a bit like overhyped for what it was. Like, I'm just a bit burnt out on things that are like, we're decentralized, and then you look into it and actually it's not that decentralized. I sort of was getting those vibes from it, but I don't know if that's incorrect.
Yeah, that's the one spot I haven't done 100% due diligence in, is exactly how decentralized it is. I know it is decentralized, but for example, I think it's like 1 to 300 nodes or whatever, and each of those nodes costs like 10 million to run or something like that, because you have a ton of bond you have to run the full nodes of all these other chains and stuff, and they churn through nodes. It's like let's just say you have like 500 bonded nodes or whatever, but only 300 are active at any one time, and every cycle they churn through the next group of nodes and stuff like that. I know the core, so I know the core development team is, I think, either at the end of this year, I don't remember the timeline they give, but they're going to leave the project, which sounds like weird. And like, I don't know if I like that approach to things, but they're basically like, we're going to get this going and then we're going to bow out and then other people can take over, kind of thing. So it depends on how they do that. You know, it's like, wouldn't we all like if like the Bitcoin core team just like pieced out and then let other people take, I mean, that would help, but then there's always the risk of like for example, when Amari gets kicked out, like who's the next like, that's a good thing, but then it's only good if whoever comes next is better, kind of thing. So I'm not 100% like, I know much more. I'm too old is really the thing. Like, I kind of know how Bitcoin works and their decentralization prospect, right? And kind of know the power of it. I know how Bitcoin Cash works. I know how Litecoin doesn't work. I know how, you know, like stuff like that. I figured it out, but then they're like, oh well. And I know that if Terra is just like buying up ass loads of Bitcoin, I know they're not entirely decentralized or whatever. And then I know like anything that has a company name like Huobi or Binance on it, I know that's not decentralized. But then it's like some of these newer ones, I'm like, I'm not as well researched on the model, the DAO model of it, if they have a DAO, you know?
DAOs, I think I sort of feel like DAOs are a bit of a scam as well too. Sort of similar to NFTs. It's not that there's nothing there or that it's never going to work, or I don't want to be, on record as like a hater of that idea. But on the other hand, I think people just think, well, if we have these 3 letters DAO in there, that it's magic. No, it's basically just a company. There's still a couple of key people who are going to be calling the shots because somebody needs to actually do the heavy lifting as to organizing things and setting things up and whatever. Okay, maybe you just created it in some sort of extrajudicial space, and that's pretty cool. And you called it a DAO, and you gave some tokens or whatever to the people who were going to have voting rights or something. But at the end of the day, you basically got a company with a board of directors and a few shareholders, and the actual DAO is going to have to actually deliver some stuff once the initial hype of we're a DAO and everybody just pours all their money in, and then they sort of wonder like, what are we actually doing here, guys? And then the real questions start. So it's like, okay, it's a bit of a fugazi for like getting it all started, and then it's just like, well, what are we actually doing here? We need to have an actual company or an actual project or something,
Yeah, the links to that are what are tricky, right? Like the access, like what, like the binding, how binding are votes kind of thing. But that's the problem with contracts in the real world, is you have to trust a government to enforce and execute them, basically. It's so the DAO is kind of the same way. The thing is, the DAO is self-executing, but which is what makes it a DAO. But like, which ones are self-executing? So like, what actually happens as a result of the vote? And so, for example, with the Dash DAO, whoever gets the most votes with a certain threshold gets money created from the sky. They just get it. You can't stop it. Like, that's the funding is self-executing. As long as the money has value, then it counts. And of course it's like a show of, whatever. But like, when you start doing stuff like you found a company and have a website or whatever it is, a tool, and there's a key, like an actual key that can only be used by majority vote of something or other. Like, you have to, in order to do a thing, like turn off a network or whatever, you have to do a DAO vote, and then the whole DAO votes. And if you just don't get the votes, it doesn't work. Like, the tech doesn't turn over. That's when you have like an actual DAO and not just some bullshit, So that's the hard thing about when you do like a company DAO, like, oh, we're going to start a DAO to buy this artwork or something. Okay, well, so you just raised a bunch of money, but then like, who owns it? Well, whoever's holding on to it, really. But it's like, no, we all own it. See? Well, is that legally binding?
Yeah, what do you even really owe? Like, yeah, especially if you bought something that was a bit esoteric. Like, okay, well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna put it in your mansion and show it off? Well, like, maybe there's only one physical copy of this thing, or maybe it's a virtual thing. In which case, congratulations, you could have had that, whether or not you all had your DAO tokens. I don't know. Yeah. It just strikes me as so much similar to NFTs that it's just a lot of people who haven't really thought through, I don't know, just the Ethereum community. A lot of this stuff seems to start there, and it just seems to me that, not to just suddenly go into bashing Ethereum, but they just, as compared to like Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Dash or something, where there's the fundamental underpinning about money and transacting.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, if you just throw in a lot of just like, we're all having fun and this is great and unicorns and rainbows, and it's just sort of like, but what actually is the substance to any of this?
Well,
I don't know.
That's what I kind of view it as a trailblazer kind of thing. Like, they get ahead of themselves for sure, the Ethereum people, but that's fine. It's like, that's why I just don't. I mean, I guess I should have owned a lot more Ethereum than I have in the past. I don't own very much because of just, it's been a nightmare to work with, especially with the fee era. But it just, I don't know, they got to figure things out and go ahead and, like, I'm just not going to be an Ethereum user until they make it a lot more practical to use. I'm not going to be an Ethereum holder until like the EIP 1559 was such a weird thing. Like, I think it's good. I think it's on the whole good because they found a way for the transaction volume, like fees, to pay out to every holder, every single holder of the coin. And I mean, I guess that's good because if you hold Ethereum and becomes more scarce, the more it gets used. It's like you're kind of invested in the success, in not just the pumping of the project, but the success of the project, the use of the project. I guess that makes sense. The problem is, at some point, you know, it kind of incentivizes, you know, the free rider problem through its economics because the node operators who process the transactions, of course, they have to have a big stake. And so obviously they make money by processing transactions, but at some point, the cost of processing more transactions might exceed the benefit that they get because you have all these other holders that are benefiting. So the economics get a little weird, but the thing where that got weird for me was it was a weird SegWit thing. I don't know if you've seen the Bitcoiners that are like regretting SegWit today. Have you seen any of that stuff?
I've seen a little bit, and gosh, that feels great. You know, it's just once again, BCH. Gosh, I don't know. Just for me specifically, it's like BCH just is like the ultimate vindication coin, and its ship hasn't fully come in yet, but just inch by inch, it just is slowly like sailing forward as more and more as things just collapse in BTC, just their own problems with this CTV stuff and governance around that, Blockstream with their fingers into everything.
It's hilarious.
Like, it's just slowly just degenerating in there, and it's just they're still at it, still blasting away. Oh, BCH, you losers, you didn't get it or you didn't lose. But as time goes on, it's just
kind of funny.
like, yeah, the world just speaks for itself, kind of thing. So
but
it's pretty funny if they're regretting SegWit.
The thing about SegWit is most of what SegWit did, like, it's such a weird, and I'm kind of tying that around, and then we got to wrap it up. But the most of the thing with SegWit did was like the malleability fix and some like the way they aggregate signatures. Like a lot of this stuff is like the good versus bad of it is very murky still to this day. And of course, sides very strong. Like, well, if you roll back to a previous version, then anyone can spend transactions maybe. And then it's like, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess that sucks, but that seems like an edge case. And then, well, but this is so awesome because like, it's all weird. Like it just seemed like almost like a nothing burger of an upgrade. But the thing that they did with the block weight, which as far as I understand was not necessary at all for the aims of SegWit, like, is in they didn't need to do that. They didn't need to change the block size to the block weight and do this weird thing. The only reason they did that is to do some weird mumbo jumbo to sell it as a scaling solution, to say, no, this is the way we scale. It's like, well, you could have just said, we want this so we can make some off-chain things and smart contract and stuff a lot easier to do down the road. They should have just done that, and maybe half the now Bitcoin Cash community would have been okay with that. Who knows? Again, it's a complicated issue, and I'm nowhere near technical enough to fully understand it. But they're starting to realize that was like they're sold some bullshit. And I remember the fees were insane on Ethereum, and then people are like, well, EIP 1559 is going to help it out, and it just made fees worse. But it's like, but look, it's ultrasound money now and all this kind of crap. And I'm like, that's not what you were saying this was about. What, was this just about making your bags heavier? Like, what the hell? Like, we're sold a scaling solution, a fee solution, and I'm starting to see the same old bullshit again, and it's making me a little like, that's one of those reasons I'm appreciative of the advancements Ethereum has made in the space, but very skeptical about it at this point because there's some weirdness I don't really feel comfortable with.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we gotta wrap it up. We gotta wrap it. We could I'm just about to start a whole nother tangent about, well, what's going on with ETH 2.0? What are you putting? No,
well,
like, let's not.
Anytime we can do a follow up to just bitch more, I'm always ready for it. I guess we have to next time. I have to make sure, just like tonight, but I have to make sure it's next time is a podcast where I do not have the Dash podcast immediately afterwards, so we can just like ramble on into the night. But anyway, yeah, let's wrap this up. Let me just make sure no one said anything else. No, I think we're good. So where can people find about you and follow all your stuff?
Yeah, just go to bitcoincashpodcast.com, and in the footer I've got links to everything, and on that site there's loads of great stuff. There's a start here guide if you don't know what's going on in crypto at all. You just read that in 1 hour and it will get you up to speed. There's all the episodes. There's my music. I have my second song I put out recently. So loving that. Recommended links, FAQs. There's loads of stuff. So yeah, just bitcoincashpodcast.com and go nuts because I spend a lot of time on that site and it's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
bcashersunited.com. No, I'm just kidding. I still want to convince Roger just tweet Bcash and that's it. But that's a different story. Anyway, yeah. So follow Jeremy and all the cool stuff he does, and then obviously like, comment, share, subscribe, all the cool stuff here. Thanks everyone for watching. I will see you guys next week, and yeah, peace, guys.